So welcome everybody to the Women of Cornet event for today. We are here this week specifically in celebration of International Women's Day, which was earlier this week. So round of applause for International Women's Week. And I'd also like to thank and welcome my two co-chairs for Women of Cornet, Nancy Morse. Nancy, give a little hello so people can see you.
Hello, welcome
And,
everyone.
and Lori Orlov. Lori,
Hey, thanks for joining us.
Yeah. We wanted to start off today with a special thank you for the help of Inside Source and All Steel, and specifically Nancy Kusich, because last year at our original scheduled date, it was going to be at their beautiful venue, and they were so helpful, offering up their gorgeous space to us, their AV team and resources, and we went through, all of their contributions and their efforts, and then, of course, for good reason, we all decided it was best if we postponed. So here we are. This is an event a year in the making. So just wanted to say thank you very much, even though we're not all sitting in that beautiful space of theirs. Thank you, Nancy Kusich, All Steel, and Inside Source. We appreciate you. I'd like to just have Lori speak for just a minute. She has a couple things to say, or to Nancy and Lori both.
Thank you. Yesenia, do you have our deck? Okay, thank you so much. So just wanted to say thank you to all of our committee members. We have done an incredible job this year. I think we put on 10 programs, and this is the last one of the year. So thank you so much for joining us today. And Nancy?
Yeah, and our committee really has rallied and bonded together, and we've had a great fun time this year together. So we just want to acknowledge those. Feel free to wave when we call out your name, but Jenny Heeman, Carrie Layton, Nadia Thine, Kendra Birch, Rashonda, Amy Ives, and Andrea Bell. And then, of course, we've had tons and tons of help from Yesenia on the HPA team.
Thank you.
And then our new EDIB liaison is Nadia, and Sean Shrivens is our board liaison. So Sean's been with us for a number of years as co-chair prior to being on the board and our liaison. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah. And speaking of Sean, from all of us at Women of Cornet, we just wanted to take a moment to wish our good friend and committee executive liaison, Sean Scrivens, a very happy birthday, as it is a big one, potentially involving palm trees and Mai Tais. So happy birthday, Sean. And thanks for all you do. And just wanted to let y'all know that we are working on a wine program for the spring. So look for more details to come on that. And then I'll hand it back to you, Soraya.
Thank you. So we are so happy to be welcoming Jackie Edwards today. Like I said, it's been a year in the making. It's been completely and totally a wonderful experience working with Jackie all throughout the year. We've been keeping in touch with one another in the rescheduling of this event. So Jackie has such an interesting background. She was born in Jamaica and raised in the Bahamas by her father, who was a minister, and her mother, who was a career woman. And she was educated at Stanford and eventually became a 5-time Olympic long jumper, entrepreneur, coach, inspirational speaker, and mother. It all started when she was around age 11. She was on a tiny grass field, a track at her school. And a man came up to her she didn't know. His name was Tommy Robinson. And he asked, "Have you ever been coached before?" Because he recognized a great talent in her as such a young individual. She, of course, had never been coached. She also didn't know that Tommy Robinson was the same man for which the National Stadium was named. And he was a big, huge statue in elite sports. So he saw something special in Jackie, and he got her all set up with coaching. And from there, her career started in high school. And she had a really successful career in high school to the point where, college came and all these big, huge universities were knocking on her door. They were courting her. They were calling her. They were offering her big scholarships. And one of those schools was Stanford. But the best part about this is that Jackie was ignoring Stanford because she didn't know who they were. She was unintentionally playing hard to get with Stanford University. So they finally got through to her. and got her on a tour. And that was that. The minute that Jackie and her family stepped foot on the campus, her decision was made. And she said it was one of the best decisions she ever made that changed the trajectory of her path for the rest of her life. Which is true because she did go on to become a 2-time NCAA champion, a 9-time world champion competitor, a five-time Olympian long jumper, and then transitioned into a career of entrepreneurship. So amazing talent and something real special in our speaker today. She's going to share her secrets with us today about how she accomplished all of that through preparation, overcoming adversity, going through a transition and managing that, and owning your outcome. So Jackie's going to talk, and we welcome all your questions. We'll take them at the end, but please do put them into the chat to me, Soraya Farah, and we'll address those towards the end of her talk. But without further ado, I would like to welcome a big, huge welcome to Jackie Edwards. Thank you for coming with us, Jackie. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, the women of Cornet, for having me speak to you all. It's really an honor and a privilege to have this opportunity. And like Soraya said, it's been pretty much a year, almost exactly a year, that we were supposed to have this event in person. And I really had been looking forward to coming up to my home away from home, which I like to think of the Bay Area. My parents actually moved there, so I usually sneak in and visit them whenever I can. So I missed the opportunity to be there in person. Um, but I would specifically like to thank Anna, Nancy, Soraya, Jenny, Lori, Yesenia, Ken, and anyone else who has helped to arrange this occasion and make it possible for me today. I know a lot of work went into it, so I'm super grateful. And thanks again for having me. So Soraya told you a little bit about my story. I'll just fill in a couple little blanks and then move into the meat of what I'd like to share with you today. So again, my name is Jackie Edwards. I was born in Jamaica. My family moved to Princeton, New Jersey for about 3 years after I was born because my father went to Princeton graduate school. So we lived in the master's, whatever, the housing on campus for 3 years. And then we moved to the Bahamas. He was a pastor and he had gotten an appointment there at a church. So we moved there when I was 7 years old. I was not particularly interested in sports or interested in it. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't something I cared one way or the other about it. If you were in school, you did sports. So that was kind of my take on it. And that gentleman, Mr. Tommy Robinson, saw me that day out on the grass track just running around because we only had one actual stadium in the Bahamas, one actual real track. So if someone said they were going to the track, you knew where they meant. It was not at your school. It was a place that you went 15 minutes down the road. So he saw me and contacted my parents and asked them for if I would be interested in coming out to train. And I personally was not interested. I was about 11 or 12 and extremely shy. So those were my reasons for not wanting to go. It really didn't have to do with wanting to do sports or not wanting to do sports. I just didn't want to be around a bunch of adults. But my mother was very adamant and she said, if the gentleman who the stadium is named after thinks that you might actually have some talent in this thing, then you're going to try it. And you can try it for a year. If you don't like it after that, you're more than welcome to stop, but you're going to try it for a year and you're going to go out there with a good attitude. And so she dragged me out there and I think I cried for a year, maybe 9 months of crying every day. And she would always say, when you're done crying, please get out the car and walk inside the stadium. So that's how my athletic career started. It took me a little while to get my footing and to get comfortable out there, but I finally started to make friends and I was having success. So I started to enjoy participating in sports. And I did end up getting those offers to college, Stanford included. And there was no internet. This was 1987. somewhere around there, 80s, 80s, yeah, when they were recruiting me, and there was no internet or anything you could look them up on. And we only knew about Ivy League schools in that kind of regard, but they didn't offer scholarships. So we weren't interested in those. So we were looking at schools like Texas, Tennessee, schools that were known more for track and field. So thankfully, the coach from Stanford actually flew down to the Bahamas because we really had ignored every attempt they had made because we didn't know anybody that went to Stanford. We'd never heard of it and thought just like, this place is all the way in California. That's too far. So we went on the recruiting trip and the rest is history. I had an amazing time there and did end up becoming a two-time NCAA champion for Stanford and still somehow have the record there for long jump. I have no idea. That's been, I don't even know, too many years to count, but it's still there. And qualified for my first Olympics the summer after my senior year. So I ended up having a 17-year professional career in track and field and went through a myriad of ups and downs. And that's some of the stuff that I want to share with you today. So I want to take the time to talk about managing adversity. It's here on the slide, transitioning and owning your outcome through the eyes of elite performance. I know that you're all very successful in your own rights, and even though our experiences are diverse, like me, you've navigated your way through a male-dominated industry, as far as I'm aware, through a broad range of circumstances to get to where you are today. And the story of my career and the trajectory that it took, it will unfold as I go along. And my hope is that at the end, you'll see the parallels in my story and yours, and you'll recognize that when all is said and done, no matter what your chosen career path is, that it's going to be the same few critical elements that will determine your success or failure and your ability to overcome challenges, remain committed, and rise to the top of your path. So let's talk about the 4 areas of professional development based on my knowledge and experience that are vital. Inevitably, no matter who you are or what you do, I think these 4 things will play a huge part in determining your longevity, your motivation, and ultimately your level of commitment or an accomplishment, sorry. And these 4 areas are preparation, adversity, transition, and owning your outcome. So next slide, please. Let me start with the first area of professional development, and that's preparation. When I looked up the definition of the word preparation, it said the action or process of making ready or being made ready for use or consideration. Another definition I found was a proceeding or readiness for a future event as a goal and an acceptable, accomplished final outcome. It's the thing that determines whether you will win or lose and whether you'll achieve your desired outcome or not live up to your perceived potential. I'm sure you're familiar with the 4 Ps. Preparation prevents poor performance. That's not easy to say, by the way. At the very base level of preparation is your foundation. And if you think of a pyramid or a building, the most important thing that keeps that pyramid or building sturdy and strong is its foundation. And if you don't get that part right, then you've lost before you've even begun. So what do I mean by foundation? I'm going to go over these 5 points that you see here on the slide that I think are important. And the first one is your beliefs, morals, and values, which I think are derived from your family and upbringing, and it revolves around what you believe in and how far are you willing to go, right? What are your boundaries? What do you value? The answer to these simple but very core questions will guide you throughout your life, and it really talks about, like, do you have a certain set of principles by which you live by, and how do you make your decisions? A lot of times when you're put in a tough spot, you have to make a split-second decision, and whether you're 25 or 75, your default instinct will be influenced by what you believe and who you know yourself to be. So for me, my father is a pastor. So we were brought up in a household where we were most definitely taught the difference between choosing right from wrong, that your choices have consequences, and that you should put hard work in if you want respect and results. And one of the most basic ones, which a lot of people forget these days, is you treat other people the way you want to be treated. And a lot of this stuff sounds really simple, but it bears repeating. Um, and if you only care about end results, uh, you really a lot of times end up going astray because you don't care about how you get to the top. But when you know who you are as a person and what you will and will not do when times are easy, you'll be amazed at how surprisingly easy it is to make a tough split-second decision to do the right thing, no matter how hard, because there are actually greater things in life than just simply being at the top. The second thing is life skills. And this is a term used to describe a set of basic skills acquired through learning and or direct life experience. And it enables an individual to effectively handle issues and problems that occur in your daily life. The type of life skills you develop as a youth, adolescent, young adult seem to always play an important role in your career success. And whether that be your education and experiences, your communication skills, motivation, self-discipline, self-confidence, flexibility, social skills, leadership skills. These are all things that we develop as we get older. And depending on the circumstance, your ability to adapt, engage, and excel in any or all of these areas generally correlate, at least it did for me, to how far you're able to go. And if you pretty much think of any situation, whether you're an athlete, a teacher, a real estate agent, a boss, and an employee, in any given scenario, you generally have to draw upon 3 to 4 life skills to ensure a successful transaction. So I think they're really important. Foundation key number 3 is your support network. That's like your family, friends, coaches, teachers, coworkers, teammates, spouses. For me, as a child, as I mentioned, my mother was a huge part of my support network. And because I was so shy and didn't want to go out to the track, we made this agreement that the only way I would go is if I could see her from the track, if I saw her sitting in the stands, it would give me enough courage to be out there and enough confidence to speak to the adults. Um, and that was what our agreement was. So for the whole first year, she sat in the stands every single day so that I could see her and be brave enough to go out there. And I like to say that she let me use her legs to stand on until I could stand up for myself on my own 2 feet. And I'm always grateful for that now. And as a parent now, I try to do that with my kids and make sure I go to as many things as possible because I know how important that was for me. Um, Foundation key number 4 is competence creates confidence. How do you instill confidence or develop it? Have you ever looked at someone and been able to sense their level of self-confidence before they even open their mouth? I always think of Serena Williams. Sometimes she wins matches. I know she's at the latter part of her career. However, sometimes she's won tournaments and matches strictly by the level of self-confidence that she exudes. You can tell she is not walking out there lacking in any way in that regard. And the gateway to having that kind of confidence, it's by practice. It's by training. You've put so much work in, you've put so much time in that you know what you're able to do and you don't question your own ability and other people don't question your ability. So it's really easy to walk into a competitive situation like that when you know how hard you've worked and that no one has outworked you. And she's someone that I think of in that regard. And for you in your places of work, I think it's in your posture or the way you carry yourself or your professionalism and the eye contact you make or the way you give a handshake. I tell a lot about the way sometimes people shake women's hands in particularly a little different. For some reason, it's like this little, I don't like that. Like just shake my hand. I can take a firm handshake and actually I like that. So to me, these are things that help give other people a sense of your level of confidence. And then the last one is work ethic, and there's no substitute for that. There's no shortcuts to longevity. and success, and you can't buy it, right? Class doesn't matter, status, that's something where we all start out on the same even playing field. Your name can't get you work ethic. It might get you in the door to something, but it doesn't keep you there, right? And it's the stuff you do when nobody's looking. So you don't get bonus points for it. You don't get extra credit because no one really knows that you're doing all this stuff on your own. It's simply inborn that you're wanting to improve and you want to get better. Um, my dad would always ask me if it was a rainy day. Once I started to like competing and whatnot, I would go whether it was raining, if I didn't feel good, no matter what, I was headed out to the track. And he would always be like, "Why are you going? It's a holiday. It's drizzling. It's what?" And I'd be like, "Dad, it's not raining in Russia. So I bet you they're out there going to the track. So I'm going today." And he would always be amazed, like, "You got to take a rest day." But I think those are the days that are important, right? These are the critical days that when you don't feel your best and you still go out and perform, and your commitment to your craft reveals itself. And you can't really teach that to somebody. It comes from within. You can work on it and improve it yourself, but someone else cannot make you have work ethic, at least not long term anyway. The second component of preparation is having a successful mindset. So I'll go through some of these things here on the slide. The first one is self-belief. So in order to presume that you can accomplish something, you actually have to believe that you have the ability to do so. It's very basic and straightforward. If I don't actually think I can go to the Olympics or make it or qualify, the chances are very high that I am not going to go. And if you don't believe that you can advance in your career as a corporate real estate agent, the chances are good that you will not. Um, the second one, outcome versus process goals. So I have a master's degree in sports psychology. And one of the things that I learned is that there are two different types of goals. So there are those where the focus is primarily on the results you'd like to achieve. So for me, that would be, at the time, I want to jump 23 feet. Someone else would say, I want to make $1 million, or I want to own a company. These are outcome goals, and they are necessary and outcome oriented. Process goals are also by definition about the process of getting to the outcome goal. They refer to the execution of a desired, observable, measurable, and achievable goal that needs to be accomplished by some process, and it's in a fixed time. And they're entirely under your control and completely adjustable as you move along. And each process goal is like a little stepping stone to get to where you want to get to the larger outcome goal. So the ideal way is to kind of combine the two. So again, going back to me, trying to jump 23 feet was my goal. By the way, my best long jump ever was 22 feet, 7 3/4 inches. Now I'm almost 50. I think I might jump half of that. So it sounds super far, but at the time that was ordinary for me to have those types of goals. So how did I get there? I had a lot of process goals. And so it included stuff like I need to improve my strength in the weight room. So I had to lift weights 6 days a week. I needed to jump and practice twice a week. I needed to sprint and practice twice a week. I had to go on these long runs twice a week. I had to have a specific diet and rest and physiotherapy and visualization and stretching and core, all these things that you set goals for to improve along the way and map out very incrementally. And one of the things having those types of goals does is it helps to keep you motivated because you can start checking off these little things that you're accomplishing along the way. And before you know it, you're improving and getting closer and closer to your goal. And that's something that helps to keep you motivated as you push forward. Next thing is intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. There's two types of motivation. And intrinsic is self-driven, right? It's when you're motivated to complete a task because of your personal goals. I want to know how far I can jump. How good can I really be? And extrinsic is something like where you're earning a reward or avoiding punishment. So I want to win a medal, I want a prize or a bonus money, or I don't want to come last. That's what I would always tell myself. If I come second to last, I'm okay. I just don't want to be last. That was always something in my head that sort of helped me, especially when I was younger. When it comes to productivity in the workplace, intrinsic and extrinsic motivation are both good, because the key to is to figure out what works for someone, for one person, and what works for somebody else, and incorporate things that will motivate both types of persons in your workplace. And if someone needs like recognition or financial types of rewards, then that's okay. And if someone is more motivated by personal accomplishments, that's okay. And because once you remove the source of motivation for someone, no matter who it is, what their source of motivation is, if you take their motivation away, they're not going to give you their best effort and not going to follow through with the task in the best way they know how. So knowing the difference between these two types of motivation means finding ways to keep all of your employees and coworkers satisfied and productive so that you have less turnover and a happier workplace. Neither one is right or wrong, it's just different. Fourth one is deliberate training or work. And that means training with a purpose or working with a purpose. And you're not just out there wasting time and clocking in and clocking out. I know people that did that all the time. They'd come to track practice, but they were just out there kind of socially. They weren't really getting work done. I know lots of people, I was a trainer for a while. Lots of people they go to the gym. They don't really work out. They talk to everybody, they go in the sauna, they're looking out the window, watching TV, and then they'll wonder why nothing happened. Like, I've been going to the gym for 3 months, nothing happened. Like, well, what did you actually do when you got to the gym? Right? So it's being purposeful and not just showing up to a place to check a box and say you did something. My training programs were set up for like an entire year in macro and micro cycles. And we did 1 month segments and then broken down by the week, 6 days a week. Every fourth week, we had 2 days off, which may sound like nothing, but at the time, those 2 days were so amazing. But the rest days were even planned. We planned what to do on the rest day so that you're ready for the next work day. So we had very clear pathways from point A to point B. And then the last one is delayed gratification. It's not easy to train for something that's 4 years away. And it's not easy to have like a 5-year plan and be in year 2 if you're not seeing the kind of progress that you want. It's kind of hard to stick to the plan. So that's why short-term goals are really important, because they kind of help you stay motivated and see that you're still working towards that end goal. The third thing on my slide here, you can see there is success is like an iceberg. That's the third component of preparation. And a lot of times what people see is all that stuff at the top. They see awards, they see accolades, they see recognition, and that's all they see. Or they see on TV and they're like, oh, that's so amazing. And they don't see all that other stuff that you did to get to that point of recognition. And I cannot tell you how many times I would have people say to me, oh, you're so lucky you got to do such, such. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I was lucky genetically because there's a certain thing that I had to be born with in order to be able to be physically good enough to do some of these things. However, I would say, let's trade places for 1 week. Let me show you what I'm doing on a daily basis and tell me if you want to train 4 to 5 hours a day, 6 days a week, 10 months a year for 25 years. And then tell me if that's luck or if I actually put in some work to accomplish this. And it's not something where I'm like talking about bragging or being full of yourself. I'm just talking about acknowledging when someone puts in work and not just seeing the cool stuff on TV or something. They don't see your struggle and your mental and physical exhaustion and the pressure and stress and all the sleepless nights. And when people try to tell you that something's easy, if they have been very successful, I would encourage you to not believe them, because if someone hits the first pitfall and they think it's super easy, they're not going to have that foundation to fall back on and know what it is that got them to that point in the first place. And if you never followed a plan in the first place, How can you duplicate that to get back what you never did in the beginning? You can't, because you didn't have a plan in the first place and you were just ending up there by chance. So um, I think you really also enjoy it a lot more when you've earned it the right way, because you can then turn around and help other people because you actually know what you were doing. It wasn't by chance. You can be a mentor, you can be a boss, you can be an owner or something and show other people, or a coach, and show other people the way to be successful. All right, next slide. That's a wonderful action shot right there. I tell you, action shots are never, they just don't look good. So there you go. That was in Australia, in Melbourne. You can see on my bib number, it was in 2006. Um, the next area of professional development is adversity. And this is the tough stuff, right? And how do you deal with it when you inevitably encounter it? The answer to this question usually separates talented people from the successful people. And we know lots of talented people who never reach their potential. I was very successful in high school, so that was what I knew. I was undefeated the entire time of my high school career in the 100 meters, 200 meters, and long jump across the island. I never lost a race, so, or a jumping competition. So I just thought that's just how it worked. I didn't know what it was to not win. And then I got to Stanford, and then also being recruited so heavily, it was, confidence boosting. So then you get to university and you're like, wait, there's like a whole bunch of other people just as talented, if not more, and they're more experienced, right? They're older. I was a young freshman. I was 17. So I'm going now to compete with people that are 21, 22, been doing this thing for a while, and I don't think I was ready mentally. Aside from the fact, on the very first day, my coach took me aside and very quietly, he's like, Jackie, let me just tell you this. You're no longer a big fish in a little pond. You're a very, very, very little fish in a very big pond. And he's like, just let that rest with you. And then he walked away and I was like, okay, thank you. Thank you for sharing that piece of information. It was like a rude awakening for me, and the beginning of a couple of really tough years for me at Stanford. Not so much academically, but certainly athletically. And it was like I was starting over. Uh, and for a career person, that's like even in the same line of work, you could be really good at what you're doing and then you switch companies or you start your own company and it's almost like you're starting over. And that's never easy to do. It's very humbling, but basically that's what I was doing. And I will never forget, we went to this meet at the University of Washington my freshman year. And I'm sure you've all heard of the freshman 15. Maybe you've experienced the freshman 15. I experienced the freshman 25. The food in the Caribbean is very different to the food in the US. And I didn't know that. I didn't think of it in that way. I was just thinking like, oh, quantities of food. And I just ate what I thought was the same amount of food I was eating in the Bahamas, didn't realize it was different types of food. And I put on weight really, really quickly. So put on this 25 pounds. And as you can imagine, for someone who needs to take her weight through the air and kind of defy gravity, that is not a good thing. So freshman year, we're at this meet at the University of Washington, and I took a jump that was not very good, and my coach walked down to the pit. And indoor competitions are very small in nature, so everyone can hear what you're saying, or everyone can hear everything. And he came down to the side and he yelled across so that everyone could hear, including the officials. He's like, if you don't stop eating all that pizza, you're going to walk your way back to Stanford. And I was still in the sand. Like I hadn't even gotten up yet. I was mortified, as you can imagine. And I just was thinking, how the heck did this happen to me so quickly? And for a long time, I was in denial. I remember calling my mother and telling her that I think the dryer shrunk my clothes. It's like everything doesn't fit right. And I blame the strength coach for making me too muscular because I was never really like chubby fat. I was just too big. I blame the food I was eating, the dietitian for not listening to me. I blame pretty much everybody except myself. And I had 2 years, I had just subpar performances that didn't even match up to what I was doing in high school. And I finally had to look in the mirror and see that the problem was me and what I was doing. Um, it also helped that my coach gave me an ultimatum and told me that if I didn't lose the weight during my the summer after my sophomore year, that I had had my second knee surgery, by the way, which was largely due in part to the fact that I was trying to jump on one leg, as you do in the long jump, with too much weight. And so he told me if I came back the beginning of junior year at that weight, keep the scholarship, don't come back out to the track. So that was a bit of a eye opener for me and it really forced me to acknowledge the problem and address the problem and not the symptom. Um, He had me jump in practice with a weight vest on that was 25 pounds. So I would take a jump without it, and then I would take a jump with the weight vest. And so I could see the difference in how it was affecting my distances. And he would say, you're trying to get the same results before without being at the same level physically, and it's not going to happen. It doesn't work that way. And he would always say to me, fat does not fly. That's kind of harsh. It's funny now. It was not too funny then, but that's what he would say to me. And as hard as it was to hear, he was right. And it's kind of like you're trying to accomplish the same in a 4 to 5 hour workday as you would in 8 hours, right? You change the plan, but you're still trying to have the same level of success. It doesn't work like that. So after the second knee surgery, I was told if I didn't put everything into it and come back stronger than even I was before, I probably wouldn't be able to compete at the same level again. And this was my crossroads, right? This is where I had to make a decision. Am I going to sink or swim? And a lot of people on the team quit because he spoke to a lot of people like that. And not everyone has the constitution to handle that type of delivery every day. And I really either was going to step up or step back at that point. And I decided to reach out for help to the nutritionist and actually at Stanford and actually follow what she gave. She had given me stuff before, but I didn't really pay too much attention. And that summer when I went home, I had that plan and I let my mom help me. And one of the things I have to say is to not be afraid to reach out for help, right? When you're having a problem at work, don't be afraid to reach out to someone else with experience and know-how. Find a mentor, a resource to help you work smart. And so you're not just wasting time. It's a sign of strength to me to be vulnerable enough to ask for help. And no one knows everything, and smart people actually know that they don't know everything. One of my friends, his name is Otto Bolden. He's an Olympic medalist several times, and he's one of the lead analysts for NBC during the Olympics for track and field. He always says, people who say it cannot be done should not interrupt those of us who are doing it. And you'll find those naysayer people, the ones who say it cannot be done, at your place of employment all the time. I had all kinds of people told me once I had put on all that weight, you should quit. It's over, just finish with the scholarship. At least you got a free education and so forth. And I just knew I had not reached my potential. So I didn't listen to them. And the people that want to hold you back, you'll find them everywhere. They're not doing anything, so they don't want you to be doing anything. They don't have any goals, so they don't want you to have any goals. They're underachieving, so they want you right there by their side. And you got to stay clear of those kinds of people. And you have to show them that if you have a plan and an unparalleled work ethic and huge, huge dreams, that you really can do whatever it is that you set your mind out to do. So that's what I did. I went right back to square one, to my foundation, to the beginning of everything, to that 12-year-old girl who didn't even really know if she wanted to be an athlete, and figure out, wait a second, if I do what these coaches tell me and I don't cut corners and I rest and eat properly and lift the weights the way I'm supposed to and take out all the what ifs, I can actually be very good again at this thing. And so that's what I did. I put in the time. I bore the monotony of eating the food that just that way where you have to eat at this particular hour is very tedious, but I stuck to it even when it didn't look like it was working, because I didn't lose any weight for like 5 or 6 weeks, not a pound. And even when I was going explicitly by the book. But I stuck to it. And by the end of that summer, I lost 23 pounds. And I did not do anything weird or crazy. I just stuck to the plan. And I'm like, at least I can say I tried it and it didn't work, but I will not go in saying, well, it didn't work for 5 weeks and then I quit. Next slide, please. So now we're talking about the third area of professional development, and that's transition. And by that, I mean the stage when you're moving into your professional identity. And a lot of times the questions that come up are, who am I? What do I want? What motivates me? And when times get hard, you'll often find yourself asking the question, why am I doing this? Is there, you know, there's always going to be someone better and smarter and faster and more connected. So you have to find your niche and master that. And in high school, I started out as a long jumper, as a high jumper, sorry. And I even tried the shot put and soon realized that my skills lied in sprinting and jumping. And then as I got to Stanford, I realized I was a pretty good sprinter, but even with all the weight issues, I was still a better long jumper. So it's almost like the higher up you go, the narrower your focus has to be. Um, and sometimes the word multitasking is overrated. If you're not doing anything well, then what's the point of multitasking? Be focused and be diligent, and being busy means nothing if you're not being productive, in my opinion. So answering why you're doing something really helps you to set your focus and set your goals and helps you figure out how you're going to measure success for yourself. So once I got fit and healthy again, I realized that my why was really because I just wanted to see how good or great I could be. And that I didn't even think of being a professional athlete then. I didn't know you could do that. I was going to be an attorney. That was what I thought. And so I really just wanted to maximize my own potential. I After not qualifying for NCAA championships at all my first 2 years in college, I started my transition back to being an elite athlete again at the beginning of my junior year. I stuck to my little plan and I ended up being Pac-10 champ and coming second at NCAA championships in the long jump that junior year. Also in that junior year, I went to the World Championships for the first time in Tokyo, Japan. I was 19 and I was the youngest person that made it into the finals. Senior year, 1992, I went undefeated as a senior. My whole senior year, I didn't lose a competition. Was Pac-10 champ again and NCAA champion twice, indoors and outdoors. And that's also the year I qualified for my first Olympics. Um, One of the things I think is important to mention for me is achieving excellence without PEDs, which is on the slide, is performance enhancing drugs. So whatever that is in your industry, whatever that means. For me, it meant my dad's a pastor, as I mentioned, so I always wanted to have a sense of pride and fairness and integrity and sportsmanship and look at my parents and be proud of what I was doing. So I never had interest in taking drugs or cutting corners or anything like that. And there's a gentleman that offered me drugs one day in Lausanne, Switzerland. Turns out he was one of those Balco people. You guys are in the Bay Area, so you know about the whole Balco thing. It had not come to light yet, so I didn't know who he was. I just know he came up to me. He was a guy from Ukraine. And he's offering me the stuff. He's like, oh, you can just put it here and put it here and you can jump so far. And I was looking at him like, are you out? Like, do you know what you're saying to me? And I spoke very clearly to him and asked him to leave me alone and told him I had no interest. And he was very clear that I was not a person that was interested in anything like that. And I'd personally rather come last than cheat. And there's absolutely no glory and honor in that to me. And if you have to purposefully step on somebody else's head to be successful, then to me, it's not worth it. And Toni Morrison has a great quote where she says, if you can only be tall because you're standing on if you can only be tall because someone else is on their knees, then you have a serious problem. So I think it's important to not be so much focused on achievement and success that you circumvent hard work at the expense of honesty. And if that's your definition of success, then I would take a long, hard look and go back to your foundation and see where there can be some adjustments. I think it's important to rely on honest and direct feedback and not just a bunch of yes people. It's okay to be wrong. And in sports, we talk about being coachable. And we all know people that are not, they cannot accept or acknowledge when they're wrong. You have to be able to accept critique personally. As an athlete, you're being told every day what you're not doing right. And you have to have thick enough skin to handle that. It's really the only way to grow. And I know a lot of people that cannot take criticism, or constructive or otherwise, and so they give up. And it is said that only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly. And that's one thing I never suffered from. I suffered from all kinds of things, but I never was afraid to fail. And don't get me wrong, I am afraid of things. I'm afraid of heights and small spaces, but I'm not afraid of failure. I am not embarrassed by it. I'm not deterred. I'm not ashamed. It means I tried, and whatever reason, I got to figure it out. And I'm going to try again. And if anything, it motivates me to prove that I can achieve my goals. And sometimes those types of goals that are hard fought and earned are more satisfying than things that come easily. And if you just have people around you that tell you yes all the time, it's very difficult to be pushed at the right time and in the right way. Um, Learning to communicate with challenging communicators. That's a thing that a lot of people deal with. Maybe it's your boss, they don't have the easiest or friendliest communication style. Maybe they're aggressive or passive aggressive. And maybe they're the highway, my way or the highway kind of person. And maybe that's not something you're familiar with or have any experience in with. And my college coach was that kind of guy, and I think I cried. I was very mild mannered, so I cried all the time, and he was so over the tears. um, but it was going to be my task to figure out how to deal with him, not the other way around. And I knew that I had to figure out how to not take everything so personally. I wanted the scholarship, I wanted the education, I wanted the degree, and he wasn't needing as much from me. So what could I do to change the way I was receiving his message? And I found a way, I call it like a human colander, to be like the thing that you pour the spaghetti in that catches all the noodles and drains all the water out. And that's who I became. It took a couple of years, but I literally would let all the harsh words just kind of wash away from me and take the good stuff. And I would just stand there looking at him, and he would say my name, Jackie, are you listening to me? Like, yes, I hear you, but he didn't see the tears anymore. And I was getting tougher as I went along, and I didn't let his words affect me as much. And turns out I ended up being one of his favorite people. Uh, Maybe I was all along. I just think he knew that I wasn't living up to my potential, and that was his way of showing it. So in 2008, when I got inducted to the Stanford University Athletic Hall of Fame, I was allowed to invite a handful of guests. And by then he was in his 70s and living in Florida. But he flew all the way out for my induction, and it was one of my most memorable days. And he had wanted that for me all along. He just wanted me to figure out how to get there. And for someone that had always been talented and always had success easily on and off the track, that was one of the greatest life lessons that I ever had. And I really wouldn't trade that for anything. Choosing your destiny. You can choose what you want to happen, right? Success doesn't happen by chance. It takes planning and it takes purpose. It takes patience and it takes persistence. And making an Olympic final doesn't happen by luck. Being a top agent doesn't happen overnight. And it doesn't happen because you wish it to be so. It doesn't happen by osmosis, and doesn't happen if you're taking shortcuts all the time. But if you accept from the onset that it's going to require some hard work and a willingness to do the very thing that other people won't, and if you're not afraid to fail, you really cannot be stopped. Next slide, last slide. Owning your outcome. I'll start with knowing how to play your strengths card. As an athlete, I knew what my strengths were. I was very strong and powerful. I was extremely muscular, that's just the way it was. And two components of long jumping are speed and power. I was fast, but not the fastest, but I was really strong. And I remember the very first time I tried the bench press in college, I lifted 140 pounds. I don't know if you know about lifting weights, but that's a fair amount. I eventually got up to 205 pounds in the bench press, and I could power clean 195 pounds. I don't know if you know about that lift, but I could squat over 400 pounds. Don't know how, that's what happened. And I swear if I tried that now, my body would probably break in half. But back then, that was my ace in the hole. So I used it to my every advantage, and I didn't take it for granted. And sometimes when you're naturally good at something, you kind of push it to the side and say, oh, I don't need to work at that. But what I did was that was my ace in the hole, and I worked at it. So there was no one that was going to be stronger than me because I did not put it to the side. I was certainly not going to let someone that wasn't as strong as me put in work and then surpass me and have me sitting there wondering, like, what happened? So that was something that I think is very important, knowing where your strengths are and maximizing your potential in that area to try and make up for shortcomings in other areas. Owning your successes and failures, right? So don't blame others when you fail, but then claim all the victories. And the ability to acknowledge your weaknesses and work on them also until they also become strengths is what helps to create a clear path to success. And one of the greatest challenges in life is the ability to accept responsibility when things don't go right because of a failure on your part. So, what are you not good at in your job? Identify what these things are. Are you adaptable, flexible? Are you knowledgeable about your industry? Are you willing to do what other people don't want to do? When you can identify those things and where you might be failing or weak, as when you can focus on those things and improve. And obviously, we all get tired. You take a moment, you gather yourself, acknowledge that fatigue, but then, don't give yourself these outs. You got to get right back up and get out there the next day because you can get comfortable in that out, woe is me kind of place. So, my final Olympics was 2008 in Beijing, in China. I had had a long and successful career. I was a professional from 1992 till 2009. I was ranked as high as 5th in the world in the long jump, and I had traveled to almost 60 countries by then competing. I would take about 100 flights a year traveling to track meets. It was a lot. So I was an Olympic and World Championship finalist. And really, I had only wanted to go to the Olympics one time and ended up doing it 5 times and competing with some of the best athletes in the world. So by the time I got to my final Olympics, I had it all written out in my head, how amazingly this story was going to end. And, I had always pushed myself beyond what I knew my limitations to be. So I was ready. I was super fit and flew to Beijing. And then I got sick 4 days before my competition with some weird virus, which to this day, I still don't know what it was. Suffice to say, I had all kinds of weird, like stuff was on my face, my mouth. I couldn't really open my mouth, so I couldn't eat. So I lost weight. I couldn't train. No one was wearing masks then, so I couldn't just walk around with a mask, but my face looked crazy. And so this is not the way to prepare to compete against the best people in the world. So I had a horrible performance. I could not wait to get off the field. I was mortified. And when you compete and come off of an international field, you got to go through this snake field of media. It was the worst experience. I was coming through the thing and the press from the Bahamas were there and they're asking me, why does your face look so weird? It's like, that's just what I need to hear after this horrible performance. Anyway, I made my way back over to the warm-up track, which is adjacent. And who do I see standing there? Everyone else had left. My Stanford coach was standing there. He was a US team coach that year. And he knew, this is now 17 years after my graduation, 16 years. He was standing there. waiting for me. No one else was, no Bahamas people were there, no teammates, no one. He was standing there because he knew I was about to fall and break into 1,000 pieces. And so he held me up and he gave me this speech and told me that the sum of who I am as a person is greater than all my failures and that it could never be measured in feet and inches. And for someone that spent their whole life quantifying their success by measuring tape in feet and inches, right, in a pit of sand, that was saying a lot to me. And he told me to pick my head up and walk out of that stadium with the pride that I had earned, get a little emotional, from the years of the hard work that I had put in, and with the comfort of knowing that I had done it the right way. So that's what I did. It would have been so easy to just wallow in tears and cry and be upset, but what he said stuck with me, and I tried to focus on the positives and not on the negatives. And sometimes things don't go as planned, and you have to try and look at the bigger picture and look to your family, right back to your foundation. These are the people that are going to support you when you fall down. And you have to find strength there and be able to dust yourself back off and get up and try again. And it's okay to be disappointed, but never let that be the end of the story. So along this road that I've traveled from university to my Olympic career and now as a professional, one of the things that I had to do was to adapt to the diversity of experience that I've encountered along the way, as I'm sure you do. Sports is notoriously a male-dominated industry, from the advertising to sponsorships, ownerships, coaches, agents, everything right down the line. And I wanted to be taken seriously. I wanted to be acknowledged for my ability and not my appearance. So I ensured that my work and my results demonstrated that. There were times I had to be flexible and adapt to certain situations, or I had to carefully pick and choose my battles, but there were times I had to stand firm. Um, I believe that your industry is also male dominated. So how do you deal with that? How do you force your male counterparts to take you seriously and to focus on your work and ability and give you that seat at the table? Like track and field, real estate is fairly objective. We rely on numbers to tell a lot of the story, and much of what we do is quantifiable. So if your work is so excellent and your results are so outstanding and your preparation is so exceptional and foundation so strong, work ethic so unparalleled, and your mindset is so powerful, you don't really have to wait for someone to give you a seat. You just take what you have earned. Um, it took me a while to get accustomed to being primarily known as an athlete and owning my professional identity. Because believe it or not, I always valued my academics as well. And sometimes people would always introduce, still to this day, this is Jackie, she's an Olympian. Like that's the end of the story. And sometimes I would feel reduced, like that's all that I am. But in time, I've grown to appreciate being recognized for my hard work and effort. And I've learned to be grateful for people's well wishes because I earned that. And I remember having an English teacher back in the Bahamas who told me that I could never be great at more than one thing and that I needed to choose athletics or academics. And I chose both. And I planned and I prepared and I sacrificed and set goals and I chose both. And I'm proud of that. And that mentality has sort of helped me to find my niche again as I try to hone my skills now in other areas beyond sports. Because if there's one thing I know how to do, it's how to plan and work hard. So at the end of the day, I'm an Olympian. I'm now a professional event planner at a university. I turn 50 next month, but I'm still growing and still planning and setting goals. I started a home staging business at the end of last year in the middle of the pandemic, and it completed 12 home projects so far, and I have another one pending. I'm still learning. I'm almost done with an online course from Harvard that I signed up for a few weeks ago, on women in history. I'm a mother and a wife, and those two things are jobs in and of themselves, as you know. I don't or haven't accomplished the things I have all at once. I carve out time specifically for each endeavor and create paths in order to do so. And I've also learned the importance of saying no. And when it's necessary to not take on more than I can manage, and that even includes my kids who want me to drive them all over the place like a taxi cab driver. And I tell them sometimes I'm not available. I need my mental health as well as my physical health. So as I close, the one thing that I know is my coach always said it to me, and it's been true for my whole life, is that what got you there will keep you there. I cannot expect the same result at 155 pounds as I do at 135. Maya Angelou also has a great saying that simply says, when you know better, you do better. What's the point of going through challenges and learning what not to do and what to do, but making no changes? That's basically that old definition of insanity, right? If you take nothing else from my speech today, please take the knowledge that we can choose our outcomes. You might not be able to always choose what happens to you, but you can choose how you respond. And from that standpoint, you become unbeatable. I'll close with one of my favorite quotes by Theodore Roosevelt. And it says, "It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man or woman who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if she fails, at least she fails while daring greatly." Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm feeling so inspired and so motivated.
Thank you. I need to sip some
That was
water.
really amazing.
Thank
So
you very much.
again, I'm Soraya Farah. So if you have any questions, please just send them to me directly and I'll go through them for Jackie here. Jackie, we have our first question, which is, with traveling 100 trips a year, how do you prep or manage for all the time changes and jet lag as an athlete or as a professional?
That was one of the most difficult. I never really, I got used to it, but I never mastered it. It was one of those things where typically for your first competition, they would fly you out so that you land literally the day before because the jet lag set in on the second day. So you fly in, you land today, you compete tomorrow, which right now, as I think about that, is an exhausting experience, but your body physically can handle it. It's on that next day where you dip physically. And so that was ideal. Even though you were exhausted, you could still handle it. You had to hydrate so much. You're that person on the plane, you had to have an aisle seat because you're constantly getting up to go to the restroom. And yes, I quit track probably 1,000 times when I would have to take all these flights. I remember one year, in a 10-day span, I was training in Austin, Texas. Within 10 days, I flew to Brazil for a track meet, to Japan, to Qatar, and then back to
God.
Texas. And then I
Wow.
quit in my mind. I was like, that's it, not doing it anymore. And then, next week I was back at the track. So yeah, it's a challenge. Like we're planning a big summer trip this right now, and I'm sort of getting my mind ready for that feeling again. So I don't really have good tips. It's a mental thing.
That was good. Thank you. And that question was from Nancy Morse, by the way. Rashonda Deku has a question as well. Are you still in touch with the coach and what is your relationship now?
Still in touch with him. He's on Facebook. So he comments on a lot of things that I post, and likewise he's so sharp because he's also took the bar exam, so he has the mentality of an attorney. He also went to he's also when my dad went to seminary at Princeton, so Brooks went to seminary as well. He has all these different things all in one person, so he's very, very sharp-minded and one of my favorite people. And I every once in a while I remind him of things that he said, and he's like, I would never say that. I'm like, yeah, you
You're
did.
like, I wrote it down.
Yeah,
Does he know your family? Does he know your
very
boys?
well. Yes,
Oh, good.
he really got to know us well, and that's how he sort of got me to come there because he flew my whole family out and has always been in touch with my parents and my brother.
Okay, good. I have a question for you, which is right now in life post elite, athlete athleticism, what do you do for fitness? And do you enjoy it or do you find it to be work?
The first 2 years, so I retired at 38 and I tore my Achilles, by the way. That's how my career really ended. I was already planning to retire, so it really wasn't like the worst thing in the world. And the recovery was difficult, but it sort of sent me into this place of I'm not working out. My leg is broke, my Achilles is torn. I can't work out anyway. And then once I was healed, I kind of just was enjoying doing nothing, but I still looked the same physically. So to me, I was like, I don't have to work out and I still have the same level of physical appearance of fitness. So I got very comfortable with that. And a lot of track athletes end up gaining a lot of weight, or probably athletes in general, because you get accustomed to eating a certain way, but then you're not burning these calories anymore. So I took about 2 years of almost nothing. I was done working out. And the idea of exercising does not appeal to me in the same way as training.
Yeah.
So I gradually got back into it and I would do little things here and there, but 2 years ago, I mean, I've always continued to do something like 2 or 3 days a week, whether it's lifting weights or going hiking or whatever. Couple years ago, my body started to remind me that that doesn't work forever. So, especially now during COVID, we got a whole bunch of stuff in the garage. We got a whole set. I have to work out like 3 to 4 times a week. I do weights, I do cardio, I do stuff. I have long conversations with myself because I'm not really that excited about doing it, to be honest.
Mhm.
It's just, can I say vanity? Like, I just want to maintain the look. I don't really actually care if I'm fit. I just want to look fit, which is kind of sad to say.
No, it's fair because it makes you feel better.
Yeah, I'm like, well, if someone still can think
We
that I
got a
was an
little
athlete,
Hallelujah on the chat
then
for that one, by the
I'm
way.
good.
Okay, thank you. Jay Shaw has a question here as well. He wants to know, who are your heroes? Where do you look for inspiration?
One of the people that I watched when I remember distinctly was Jackie Joyner Kersee. And I have a good story about her. Do you guys, if you heard of her?
Yeah.
So she was one of the most famous US athletes. She was a heptathlete. And I remember watching her on TV in 1984 at the Olympics. And I was 12 around then. That was right around when I was starting. And I remember her competing and I thought, oh, I like, her presentation. She seemed like a good person, which to me has always mattered as well. And I remember my first Olympics, so 1992. She knew who I was because she went to UCLA. Her husband coached at UCLA. And so we would see them at Pac-10 competitions. I go to the first Olympics. When you compete at the Olympics in the long jump, they split you into two groups. So let's say there are 50 jumpers. They put 25 in one group randomly, 25 in another group randomly, and you jump in these two groups in a particular order. You take 3 jumps in each group, and then the top 12 marks out of those 50 people with their 3 jumps move on to the final a couple days later. I happened to be in the same group that she was in. So they line you up in the order that you're going to jump, and that's how you walk out onto the field. I just happened to be in the order ahead of her, in the random order of jumpers. They do it randomly. So we're walking out into the stadium, and I'm hearing all the people in Barcelona going, Jackie, Jackie. And I was like, this is amazing. Like they know, maybe they watch US NCAA championships. So I was like, waving at the people. And then I kind of like turned and I saw her waving and I was like, oh my God. Like no one's waving at me. It's not me. Yeah, that was my first, one of my memorable Jackie. And I saw her looking at me like, this girl really thinks they're calling her name out. So yeah, she's one of my, for sure. And then honestly, just my mom, because she never lost the fate. Even when I was struggling with the whole weight thing and wasn't doing much of anything and was just complaining about everything, she just was like, you can get back. And she never lost. I could come last, first, nothing, everything. And she just always kept me sane.
That's great. Thank you for that. Keep your questions coming. I had one actually. I was curious to know when did the word Olympic start to be whispered in your ear as an actual possibility? As an
It
actual,
was around, it was in high school.
yeah. Okay.
Um, Probably, so in the Bahamas, we start school earlier than you do here in the US.
Mhm.
So high school for me, I graduated high school at 16. And then I did an extra year because my parents were like, you're too young to go to the States. So this was around when I was maybe 15 or 16. And I almost qualified for the 88 Olympics. So that was before I went to college. As a senior in high school, I missed it by about 3 or 4 inches. I wasn't trying to make it. I didn't think, I didn't think I was on that level yet. And then I missed it by that little bit. And people start saying, if you're in a small country, then people start saying like, oh, maybe you can go. And we had another female long jumper at the time who had qualified. So that was the first time I actually even thought that was a thing. When I watched Jackie jump in 84, I don't even know if I thought I could do that because I wasn't really doing sports then. I just liked watching her. So it wasn't till I missed making it that I thought, oh, well, maybe on the next one, if I'm trying to make it, I could do it.
That's great. So Wendy Lanet, wait, I got to read your last name, Wendy. Sorry about that. Wendy has a question that says, how did you decide what to do once your track career ended?
That was tough.
Shanahan. Thank you,
That
Wendy.
was tough because because it ended a little earlier than I planned with tearing my Achilles, so I wasn't quite set up. I had gone to graduate school during that time. So I did have a master's degree, but I didn't really want to be a sports psychologist. So that degree was just kind of sitting there. I thought I wanted to be one when I got the degree, but then I changed my mind. So once I was really now done with and having no extra income, I kind of had to figure it out. And so I ended up doing personal training for quite a while. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I just was doing it because it was sort of fairly straightforward, an easy progression. And in LA, you can make decent money as a trainer because people will pay you for training. So I did that, but I knew that wasn't my passion. I didn't wake up in the morning and go, yes, I'm going to train people. Like that was not the feeling I had. And I knew when I started thinking, I don't really want to go train people anymore, that I needed to start making a different plan. And I've always been a creative kind of person. So I like, aside from academics and that sort of stuff, I'm a creative, artsy kind of person. So that's when I started looking in, talking to myself. I think I was talking to my now husband then, and he was like, you have to figure out what, you can't apply for a job. You can't try to get a job if you don't know what the job is. And honestly, so those some of the benefits of competing for all these years was that was amazing. But then who's hiring a 38-year-old who's never worked, right? You're not like high on people's list for employees. You have no actual work experience. And if they don't know you as a person, to know that you have other abilities. So I had to kind of figure out what it was that I liked. And I figured out that it was sort of in the event planning area. I liked making spaces look good, which honestly, I didn't even know. You don't even, your awareness of what people do for a living is kind of narrow when you're competing because you're just like the horse with the blinders in the race. You're not really paying attention to. I didn't even know what it was like to go to the movies during the week. I had never done that.
Mhm.
Simple as that. I did not have that experience till I was like 39. So much less figuring out what I wanted to do for a living. So it took a while, and then I kind of landed on it and know for sure. And it's kind of the same thing with home staging. It's the same thing. It's the same area. So one is a short-term space, one is, it's events, homes, anything. I just like to be creative in that way.
The two questions came in literally. Let's segue right into that. So one is for Shonda. That sounds like you have an interest in design. Can you share more about the house staging? And Jana Gunzel also wanted to know, let us know the name of your event planning company and your staging company as well. So tell us more about that. You have a lot of people here who are in design. So
Oh,
this is right up their alley.
well, the home staging business is called Gold Medal Home Staging and Design. There, that's what I came up with. So creative. Um, goldmedalhsd.com is the website. So that's where you can sort of see projects that I've worked on. I had my own event planning company. I still have it, but I work for a university now. So I do events at Cal State Northridge. And we've been working virtually for a year. So now I've become, have this added ability to do online events, but I never had that before. I was an in-person kind of event planner.
That's
But
what we
now I'm, Zoom master. Well, no, I'm not a master. I want to be a Zoom master. I am not yet. So I have an event company as well, but I don't do as much work with that. I will once kind of events, in-person events start up again. And that's called the Deuce Group.
Great. Another question was that it was from Jana earlier, that you mentioned you have children, and were either of them interested in sports and athletics?
So I don't have kids of my own. I did not get married till 2018. My husband was married before, and his ex-wife, he has 3 kids they're all boys, 11, 13, and 15. Their mom passed away a few years ago. So then I sort of transitioned into this role from a person dating a guy with an ex-wife and kids to mom.
Mm-hmm.
And that was prior to us getting married. So I'm fully immersed in this role. I've told them not to make one sound in this house while I am on this call. And if I hear them breathe, I'm coming in there. So that's how I've been with them now in that role for 5 or 6 years. The oldest one, my husband ran track at UCLA. So he has his dad's genetics. He was Pac-10 champ. We were at Stanford and UCLA at the same time. He says he knew me and he would see me and I paid him no attention. I don't remember. That's his story. And their dad is also a sports psychologist. So they're around a lot of athletes. He deals with a lot of like he worked for the Lakers last year. So he got a championship ring. They're all excited about that. So he's now started, the oldest one, showing his own interest in track, because we had taken him out to the track a few years ago and they're like, nah, hasn't told the kids on his team that I've competed in the Olympics. Not mentioned it, hasn't told them that his dad ran track in high school, but we're finally starting to see that thing in him, that work ethic thing that I didn't know that he had up until last year, because he would just complain and be mad that the workout was hard or something. I'm like, well, track is not for you then, because it's hard work every day. But now that he's seeing, if you put in this amount of work, you can get this amount of results. He likes that sort of control of the result. And so he's all into it. In fact, he's at track practice right now. Took an Uber because I couldn't take him. And his dad's out of town.
That's fantastic.
Actually working with Bay Area team, San Francisco Giants. He's working with them as well. Yeah.
We love our Giants.
Yeah.
We love them so much. Well, that's great. I have no other questions. Any other questions, people? No, but we just have, I'm going to save the chat for you so you can take a look at it later. But people have been really engaged and loving your talk. And so we just wanted to thank you so much. We're going to go into a breakout room, but before we do, I just want to please give Jackie a round of applause. We really, really appreciate it. And
Thank you.
Jackie, stick around for the breakout if you want to. You'll get popped into someone's room if you feel like it.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Jackie.
you very much. Thank you.
Before we go into the breakout rooms, guys, we'll do one breakout room. And I want to make sure also that you know that the comms team, the digital team at Cornet have done an amazing job in totally revamping our newsletter. So it just came out for the first one of this new format yesterday called Core News. And I wrote an article about Jackie in that. So there's so many great articles in there, but there is one about Jackie. If you want to check that out sometime, tonight or this week, you'll really enjoy it. And congratulations to the Common Digital team for that really fantastic piece of work there.